Hey everybody, it's me, Ben, here on YouTube. So, as a Bucks fan, this is obviously kind of a sad day. Um, Found out that Lavonte David has officially retired. 14 seasons with the Bucks, only played for one team, which nowadays in the NFL that's extremely rare. But nevertheless, Lavonte, all 14 seasons in red and pewter and sometimes in creamsicle. Um, I gotta say, he was one of my favorite players. Not just because he was on the Bucks, but he was one of my favorite players. Period. One of the better linebackers we've had in NFL history, and especially during his generation. You got to think that he played alongside in the same generation as Luke Kuechly and Bobby Wagner. And oftentimes Lavonte got overlooked because, you know, Bobby Wagner, Luke Kuechly, their teams were in the playoffs during the 2010s, where the Bucks, they weren't. Um, Before Tom Brady came to Tampa and they won that Super Bowl, Lavonte was, you know, on teams that weren't very good. And, that's why you didn't hear much about Lavonte if you're a casual NFL fan. The teams weren't very good, but he was one of the few great players the Bucks did have during that era around the 2012 when he first got drafted to around the 2020 season. So, the one of my favorite moments for Lavonte was when I went to the game in San Diego in 2016. He had that pick six from Phillip Rivers, and his first interception was off of Peyton Manning. So Lavonte's done a lot of great things, a lot of accomplishments in his career. He's played 215 games. He, never missed more than, I believe, 5 games in a season. He had nearly 1,600 total tackles. He had 1,579 to be exact. 1,035 solo tackles. He had 14 career interceptions, including the pick six that I mentioned against the Chargers in 2016. He also had 42 and a half sacks. So Lavonte is right up there with, as far as stats go, with some linebackers, defensive players that are in the Hall of Fame now. So certainly Lavonte, I believe, will be in the Hall of Fame. Question will be, will he be a first ballot? Maybe. We'll see. But no doubt he'll be in the Ring of Honor. I would say Lavonte is a top 10 Buck of all time, easily. I know you can only have 4 in a Mount Rushmore, so I wouldn't quite put him in my Mount Rushmore, but he's definitely in my top 10 all-time Bucks, without a doubt. And again, I'm actually glad he's retiring, not because I wanted him to, but you could see the last couple of years he's still played hard, but, you could tell he's lost a step, can't get to, quick enough to the tackles. I know he played on a bad knee last year, so that attributed to it, but like I said, it shows you what a warrior he is and how tough he is. And most of all, just set a great example for, his teammates, his peers. The leadership that he provided, is, that's priceless. So, nothing but respect, from me, not just as a Bucks fan, but just as a NFL fan, period. He deserves that respect and all the accolades that he got on the field and the accolades that he'll get, post-retirement, whether that's Hall of Fame. He definitely deserves it. And he is going to be missed. And, it's going to be different not seeing him and Mike Evans and Red and Pewter next year. We kind of knew this day was coming. We didn't quite know when because he was doing 1-year contracts, the last few years. He either wanted to play for the Bucks or he'd retire. So, there's no other team. I know he had interest from other teams a few years ago, but he chose to play in Tampa through the good and through the bad. That just shows you how much he loved the Buccaneers, how much the Bucks loved him. They really adored Lavonte, and he is definitely going to be missed. Like I said, he's one of my favorite Bucks players. He exemplified, leadership on the field, and he exemplified class. Did it with grace. Never heard anything bad about him. He just led by example. And, you don't have to be loud and, boisterous to be a leader. Leaders come from different personalities, whether they're loud or quiet. That's where they come from. And Lavonte is one of those guys, and he's definitely left a legacy, a great legacy with the Buccaneers organization. And I'm lucky and proud as a Bucs fan that he played on my team, and that's cool. That is really cool. So, that's pretty much all I got to say about this, about Lavonte. Giving him his respect that he definitely deserves, and hopefully sooner than later, when that first year of eligibility comes up, that he will be getting that knock on the door and being told that he is a member of the NFL Hall of Fame, and he'll get that yellow jacket and that bust in Canton, Ohio. So that's all I got to say for that. Lavonte, thank you for being one of the best Buccaneers in the history of the franchise, both on and off the field. Thank you, Lavonte.